back to the Early Weigh-In podcast, and this week we've got UFC Vegas 41. Who would have guessed it? Middleweights headlining in the Apex. We've got the return of Paulo Costa taking on Marvin Vettori. Both of them coming off losses to the champ Israel Adesanya, trying to claw their way back through the division and make themselves relevant again. We're back up to 14 fights this week. Mason Jones and Jonathan Martinez both able to get them some short notice fights. Since they were added short notice, we're not going to cover them, not giving us enough time there. But, 14 fights, I'm never going to complain. And at least this week, man, they're giving us a pretty good main event.
Definitely better than the last 2 weeks.
Definitely better than the last two. And hopefully we don't see a decision here like we've had in our last couple as well. Next week is a massive pay-per-view in UFC 267. The week right after that is 268. We're going to jump into things, man. And as always, we're going to be transparent. Even in salty-ass defeat, man.
Yeah, man. So our night started off great where we had Luana Carolina straight up at plus 200. A lot of people saw that decision being super greasy. Yeah. I think both of us thought it was a clear 29-28. And ultimately, Carolina just being a little bit too big for Loopy was the deciding factor in that fight. Then it moves on to Andrew Sanchez, where we threw a unit on him at plus money, and it looked like a damn good bet up until that third round.
Even though two judges didn't give him round one somehow.
Crazy. So we were going to be screwed either way, possibly. But a huge cardio dump, and probably lost my trust in future bets, to be honest with you.
2 fights in a row he's been finished in round 3.
Exactly. Then it goes to the 4-unit swing on our night where we just get screwed by the judges, in my opinion. We had Amiv to win. We had put him in a parlay, but that half the parlay dropped, and we ended up having 3 units straight on him at minus 300. In hindsight, a little bit of a square bet. We'll admit that, but Amiv won that fight.
But yeah, you're right. Looking back, we were banking on a guy who historically goes to decisions. We're needing a decision win, and we laid minus 300. So looking back, a little bit of square, but yeah, man, you should have taken that one.
I tell you what, with the submission attempts that he had in that fight, we almost looked like big brains taking Amiv inside the distance. One that'll really eat at us a little bit. Then we had, kind of stop the bleeding a little bit. We had Jim Miller inside the distance, and that looked like a damn good bet. And props to us for laying off and showing a little bit of maturity, not jumping on Miller first round submission like he had shown in the past 4 fights.
Or just even submission in general. It was plus 240, plus 250, and we got inside the distance at plus 220. And occasionally, man, you got to be smart. You got to explore all the lines, and occasionally you can exploit something like that.
For sure. So I think that... we can learn from a lot of things here. We shouldn't have put too much trust in Amiv like we did, but, I think that we probably should have had a positive night. I think we did our job as far as reading the fights.
Just the game we play sometimes.
Yeah, didn't work out for us that night. So it looks like Jonathan Martinez is going to start off the card for us, but we're actually going to skip ahead to the women's strawweight division where we see the Brazilian gangster Livinha Souza taking on Randa Markos. This is a super interesting matchup, but one that I don't really think is lined right. On one end, we have Souza, who's a BJJ black belt, a judo black belt, and it's tough. I think a lot of people are putting weight on her last performance against Amanda Lemos, who I personally think is champion material. She will be fighting for the belt, and I don't think that that's a stretch to say that. Honestly, I believe what Lemos did to Souza, she would do to 95% of that division. So to try and draw from that fight, it's kind of unfair to Livinha Souza. In her other fights, like the Brianna Van Buren fight, that one, I guess, is the most concerning fight that I see on her record. That's a path to victory that Randa Markos tries to emulate. I just don't think that she's going to be able to get it on a much more athletic striker and in Livinha Souza. Markos right now, she's hanging on to her UFC career by a thread. She's on an L4, and I know her last fight was a little bit weird, losing by a legal upkick. She was getting ragdolled in that fight, and by a judo black belt. So if this does get into a clinch situation, I expect Souza to kind of have the edge here, and I think Souza at minus 120 is honestly a steal. How are you feeling about this?
So I hadn't put in, the time to when you had first talked to me about this one, and right off the bat, it's like, for me, Randa Markos can make any fight close with her grappling, and that's what I told you. But really, as I dive into it, man, I pretty much 100% agree with you. With Souza, I think it's a whole lot of recency bias that this is close to pick 'em. And it's just it's because she's coming off just one of the worst performances of her lifetime, and she never really got started, put on her back foot, dropped with the power early, and I don't want to blame her or anything, but she looked like she wanted out, And
I would want out.
Exactly, and it turns out at 115 pounds, Amanda Lemos is a fucking nightmare, But outside of that fight, man, I definitely see ways that she can easily win this fight against Randa Markos. I think she's got the good forward pressure. She's got the better striking skills, a good body kick. You talked about the judo, jiu-jitsu background there. And in the Van Buren fight, she gives up a little bit too much cage control, I guess, that I'd like to see. But in round 3, when she loses that fight, she jumps the guillotine and gets stuck on bottom. So it's like, if she doesn't make a stupid decision like that, she might not have even ended up on bottom. And then we go back to the Sarah Froda fight. Sarah Froda misses by 7 pounds, and she still takes that fight and is able to deal with the physicality of Froda. Man, I like her here against Markos, who, training out of Travis Luter's BJJ in Houston, Main Street Boxing in Houston. Those were Kevin Holland, Derek Lewis train at. She's not getting real high-level, training partners around her. She's got a 10-12 record on a 4-fight losing streak, and you talked about the reason she's back, it's single-handedly probably because people thought Pinheiro was milking that a little bit, and that's probably why we do see Markos get another shot here. I do want to give her some props where props due. Coming into her last fight, she had fought 10 of the current top 15 flyweights. That's pretty much unheard of, and you can almost excuse the record when you look at that. She's got wins over Carla Esparza, who should be the rightful next title challenger, and she's got a draw with Marina Rodriguez, who, in my opinion, looks better and better each time that she comes out there and is a damn good striker. And then when you look at who she's lost to, Ribas, she's a legit black belt. Mackenzie Dern, I don't even need to exaggerate. Murata at one time was an Olympic hopeful for Japan. And then even Pinheiro, you talk about the jiu-jitsu black belt. Those girls,
judo black
belt. Those girls have some of the grappling credentials that can negate some of this for Randa Markos. And so that's what made me real hesitant before I went into this one. But watching that Mackenzie Dern fight, man, I cannot lay money on someone with the fight IQ of Randa Markos, who voluntarily goes into the guard of a world champion Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. I mean, the fight IQ is out the window, and recently Randa Markos has not looked like the Randa Markos of old that was doing that to to Esparza and to Marina.
Honestly, I think that speaks to where these girls are in their career. You've got Randa Markos, who's 36 now, and it's not win one, lose one anymore. This is 4 in a row now, and I do think that it's an indicator of her drop-off as an athlete. And you talk about Souza coming into her own right now, prime 30 years of age. We both kind of think that that's when MMA prime starts, and I think that this is probably Markos loses this one and she's out the door of the UFC.
Yeah, man, she was getting dumped on her head straight up last time out there, just bull rushing forward with just sloppy defense, getting tagged. I personally don't like what I've seen from Markos out of the last couple, and I'm glad we were able to dump a unit on Souza to start the night. Jumping up to the men's flyweight division, we see Jeff Molina, who's 9-2, taking on Daniel Lacerda, who's 11-1. And with Molina, one of the Glory MMA guys, just like one of his partners fighting in the co-main event here. And with Molina, you can really see, the striking with him and James Krause and all the work that they do together. And when you look through this guy's record, he's only got 2 losses. One comes in his very, very first pro fight when he's up at bantamweight. And the next one, a fight or 2 later, where he takes on Nate Smith, who's a damn good wrestler and somebody that we've seen on the Contender Series before. And, since then, put together an 8-fight win streak that includes a win on the Contender Series and fight of the night at UFC 261 with the Ricci Lane. I remember that fight night opens with Carnelosi and Nalaang, and just an absolute barn burner. And then fight right after that, Molina and Ricci Lane just blow the roof off the place into the final bell. Both guys getting saved by the bell at one point, and again taking home 50 G's in his debut. With Lacerda, though, he's training out of Brazil, and it looks like he trains with Cowboy Oliveira a little bit down there. And he cornered him in that Nico Price fight, and he's actually been in Vegas ever since. So it's nice to see that he's here getting adjusted. He's not just making the flight over on the week of fight camp. There's not a lot of tape out there to watch on Lacerda, though. There's only 3 fights there on the tape index, I believe. Really what I can get from him is the guy crashes forward, calf kicks, makes for a fun fight. You see the capoeira kick in there every now and then. If he's going to have success, it's probably going to be bullying Molina up against the cage, getting him to the ground. There's a lot of question marks for him. So instead of picking a side for me here, man, I like fight doesn't go the distance. I know it's flyweights, but they are offering you plus money. And Lacerda has only been to the second round one time in his entire career. So that's probably how I'm going to look at that play. But if you want to pick from me, I'm going to go with Molina. How about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm with you on, I think this will be a banger of a fight for 125ers, but I'm probably going to lay off the fight doesn't go the distance. For me, it seems like Lacerda hasn't ever reached the judges because he hasn't really faced great competition, you know? I think that this probably will be the first fight where he has pushback, and it will probably extend him into the later rounds. I kind of liken Lacerda to somebody like Randy Costa, who, you know, it's really tough to cap him until you see him past that first round, you know? And until that happens, I wouldn't be confident betting on Lacerda or betting against him. Molina at this point, yeah, he looked good in that Aori fight, but he did get chin checked, you know? And that's something that you got to be concerned with, knowing that Lacerda is a power puncher. So I understand where you're coming from on taking the fight doesn't go the distance, and getting plus money on it is just another reason too. But like you said, the 125ers, I'll lay off just because if we were to miss that, we'd kick ourselves in the ass, you know? I guess that's really all I got for it. You know, for the most part, Lacerda, like you said, he crashes forward, and I think that could offer Molina some problems, but I do expect Molina to be the much more technical striker, especially with James Krause in his corner. Just not something that I'd be comfortable laying that minus 165 price tag on, knowing or not knowing anything about Lacerda.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. The big question marks for Lacerda is what's, keeping me off of betting Molina too, but I like what I see from Molina on the feet. You see him flow from stance to stance, beat up the lead leg. When he turns to southpaw, has a nasty body kick that I think could cause Lacerda some trouble as he extends him on, tend to work the body a little bit. And El Jefe looked like he could fight pretty well moving backwards last time as Ricci lane was all in his face, putting him on his back foot the whole time. I like Jeff Molina, but like you said, it's enough to probably keep me off of it. But I did tell you yesterday when I was looking through the stats, at flyweight, the favorite wins 77% of the time. And at the minus 165 price tag, that's a 62% probability. So, if you're a big numbers guy, Yanni the Greek, something like that, you actually might see some value on El Jefe Molina there, but probably going to be a pass from us.
One thing I got to bring up, the Aori fight, that is kind of the first competition that Molina fought. Up until that point, he really wasn't fighting the cream of the crop, with Jacob Silva being his toughest test till that. And he beat Aori, looked good, but he did get chin checked. I think that this is probably both guys' toughest fight to date. And as we've already touched on, the unknowns. Yeah. We move on to the lightweight division, where we see Khama Worthy taking on Jai Herbert. And this is a tough one to call, man. Definitely not one where I'm trying to lay money on the juice. And when it comes to two guys coming off of 2 KO losses, I just got to sit back and enjoy the violence, Khama Worthy in his last fight, getting chin checked for the 7th time in his career, that's tough, man. That is absolutely tough. And at 35 years old, I don't think that it's going to recover by any means.
People give James Vick and Rockhold shit, but don't even mention this guy.
Right. It's insane. And if you guys have been watching our show, you'll know that I fucking do not like Khama Worthy.
We're a Worthy fader.
Yes. That being said, I'm super happy that we didn't jump on Herbert this week. He is getting up there into the minus 180s, and I think this will be a shit show for about as long as it lasts.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. With Khama Worthy, when you look through the guy's Instagram, it's a small gym in Pittsburgh, and at 35 years old already, Khama Worthy has not made improvements from fight to fight from what I've seen whatsoever. He's there to collect checks and get out of there and around, The biggest knock on him is what you really talked about. He's finished in all 8 of his losses, and 7 of those by TKO. And how are you ever going to back somebody that has, shown that in, goodness God, a third of their fights they get KO'd, and just not, And the same can be said for Jai Herbert, but it is more on the Worthy side. On the feet, though, Worthy, he's powerful. The power tends to shock some guys, and he's real strong in the clinch. I think it would be smart to protect the chin a little bit and go to the wrestling, go to the clinch. I think he'll wind up being so much stronger, and I know it's not, a path you see Khama take all the time, but I think he'll have a massive grappling advantage against Jai Herbert here. And Herbert, like I talked about, pretty similar situation. He's been finished in all 3 of his losses, and 2 of them by knockout on a 2-fight losing streak. The loser's going home here, in my opinion. But with Jai Herbert, the guy's still developing. He's 33 years old, but he just turned pro in 2015. He's working alongside of Leon Edwards, and when you watch him fight, the dude is just basically a conventional version of Leon Edwards. They throw the same straight hand down the middle, the same straight body kick. They love the footwork on the outside, and the same things cause them trouble. Strong grapplers and the calf kick. Like you said, I'm glad we didn't jump on Herbert, man, because early in the week, anytime someone's facing Khama worthy, I do want to jump on that and beat the line because Khama is somebody that I fade. But he's no stranger to upsets, and I really do think that both of these guys have potential to be put away on Saturday. I just got to go with who I think is the more technical of the two, and that's Jai Herbert. I think he's going to get slip one of those straight right hands in there. Probably put Khama away, but, man, take everything I say here with a grain of salt other than, like you said, it's going to be a shit show.
Yeah, and there is a line out there that I do kind of like for this fight if you had to bet it. You can get on our book, Willie Hill, minus 225 for fight doesn't go to decision. That's right under 70% chance, and considering that Herbert's only seen the judges one time in his whole career, and both these guys are chinny, I think that's a decent price tag.
I don't hate the price tag. I'm playing it straight or parlay. To be honest with you, I don't like that. Next up, in a loser leaves town fight, we've got Laureano Staropoli, who's 9-4, taking on Jamie Pickett, who's 11-6. We're in the middleweight division here for this one. With Staropoli, he's on a 3-fight losing streak, and he's having trouble making weight at 170, so they made him bump up to middleweight. And to me, at middleweight, man, this guy is going to be severely undersized, and it was kind of shown in that Roman Dolidze fight that he's going to struggle with the size and the strength of a lot of these middleweights. But when he's at striking range, it's where he's best. He has a good body kick from southpaw, a real good left hook, and he's able to kind of flow from both stances. But again, at this middleweight, man, I think he's severely undersized, and I really don't like him here. And just the size in general, man, I think Pickett potentially could be a live dog or enough to say, hey, I don't think Staropoli should be a 2-1 favorite here. With Pickett, he's coming off the loss to Jordan Wright, and I think that's pretty much why this line is where it's at. You could see the disappointment on this guy's face after getting caught with those elbows. He just went 15 minutes with Puna Hele, with Tufan. Like I said, you could just see the disappointment in his face getting finished by Jordan Wright. Got great size, length, athleticism for the division, and I truly do think that could be enough to get it done here, man. Dolidze wasn't doing anything special, man. He was just putting him on the cage, and Staropoli had zero answers for that. So yeah, Pickett's a live dog for me. Probably maybe something I don't tell you to hit heavy, but I will tell you to keep Staropoli out of your parlays on Saturday.
Okay, so I would agree with that maybe the price tag on Staropoli isn't the best, but I would say that Staropoli is rightfully the favorite here.
Yeah, no, this is going to be the casual cap a couple weeks ago.
It was. We've got a better one this time. But yeah, this one, Staropoli, he did just get out-muscled in the Roman Dolidze fight. We actually cashed on that one. We were kind of banking on him being undersized. But I've been duped multiple times by this Jamie Pickett fucker, and it won't happen again, man. I mean, he's a freak athlete with incredible length, but he has zero clue how to use it. I texted you a couple weeks ago and told you that he just reminds me of a worse Bevon Lewis. He's got all the physical advantages, but just no volume, doesn't know when to let his hands go. And in my opinion, it's kind of a shame that he's in the UFC right now. He was able to get 3 opportunities on the Contender Series to get into the UFC, and I think that there's a lot better fighters out there that deserve that chance. It's I think that it says something that Jamie Pickett can lose to 5'10" Charles Byrd, and now he's fighting Staropoli, who's 6'1", and I think a better fighter than Charles Byrd. I think that Staropoli's going to roll here. I do think that it's Staropoli's best matchup since he fought Thiago Alves. Muslim Salikov, Tim Means, and Roman Dolidze, who's a ex-205er. Those are tough fights to come up in a weight class and fight. And I think that this one's honestly a cakewalk compared to those fights, and I expect Staropoli to win, but like you said, I probably will not be dishing out that price tag of 2-1.
Yeah, man, I can't disagree with anything you said there. I solely am kind of drawing comparisons to the size of Dolidze, giving him so much issues, and you're right. Pickett don't know how to use any of that athleticism when it comes to his striking and stuff, but I think if he gets his hands on him, he very well could make this a boring fight of just pushing him up against the fence and maybe laying on him. I just more or less not so much all in on Pickett, more or less just have a problem with Staropoli being a minus 200 favorite.
Mm-hmm. Our next fight takes place in the strawweight division where we see Tabatha Ricci taking on Maria Oliveira. Tabatha Ricci's fine,
Yeah,
dude.
she
She is a good-looking girl, man. But, man, the amount of confidence I see in her as a 2-1 favorite this week is kind of astounding. When I look at her and I try and put looks aside, she is young, small, and unproven for this at this point in her career. Mm-hmm. And when people are getting these reads, I know that they didn't gain anything from that Manon-Fiorot fight. I mean, Tabatha Ricci was just a nail for that fight. And then they have to be drawing conclusions off of, performances against 2 and 3 fighters on the LFA scene. Tabatha Ricci's 5-1. And her best fight is the 2 and 3 fighters in LFA. That's tough to draw big comparisons. Now she's fighting a girl in Oliveira who has 4 inches of height, 5 inches of reach, and 3 times the experience as Ricci. To me, I think that this is a coin flip material type of fight, and to say that anybody has a strong read on this fight, I think that they're pushing it a little bit. How I see it, I can get the more experienced girl, the bigger girl, at a plus 195, and I think that I'll take that.
So, at first, when I was seeing all the people betting her at minus 200, driving that number up, I was a bit surprised at first, man. But I did some digging into it, and I know she's small and stuff, but I think she's going to have a clear path to victory here. While her record does show only 5-1, she does have some, custom rules bouts on there where they're like 3 minutes rounds and stuff. So a little bit more experience. And then she's got all the jiu-jitsu competitions and stuff as well that she does compete in. And you're right, there's not a whole lot you could take from that Manon fight other than just the girl's game, man. She takes a fight on short notice up a weight class. Turns out to be one of the, the most feared girls and prospects making her way through the division. And she gained a lot of people's respect, taking a whole bunch of damage before finally going down. She trains out of Black House in California, so she's working with Sabina Mazo. She's working a whole lot with Mackenzie Dern. You see her grappling with Vettori at a jiu-jitsu place in California. She posted pictures of herself at AKA. I know she's putting in the work on the mat, and I know she sees the advantage that she's going to have here on the mat. But yeah, it is a whole lot. There's not a lot to take away from her beating 2 and 3 girls on the regional scene. Where on the Maria side, I think a lot of people are seeing, you see Tabatha Ricci, who has all this success, in jiu-jitsu competitions, grappling, submissions, and then you look at Maria Oliveira and you scroll through her social media, and the girl was just awarded her purple belt in jiu-jitsu on August 1st. So she's definitely at a deficit to Tabatha when this fight hits the mat. And although she is 12-4, she just beat a girl that was 0-0 to get into the UFC. And before that, the girl was 0-1. So you really can't take away, a whole lot from watching Maria. I do like her striking. I think she's going to have the striking advantage here if she's able to keep this on the feet. She fights long. She has a whole bunch of kicks. She likes to slip and counter with that right hand, kind of similar to Amanda Lemos and Figueiredo. And she finished her last opponent with a nice knee up the middle when they tried to clinch. So, she got some answers for Tabatha if Tabatha's going to try to close that distance. I do feel you, though. I personally, I see the grappling, advantage for Tabatha Ricci, and that's why I'm way more inclined to lay plus 300 on her submission prop here than minus 200 on her as a favorite, because you're 100% right, man. She's completely unproven.
So I got to draw comparisons with this fight to the Lupi Godinez-Luana Carolina fight. I think Tabatha Ricci is going to be at such a size disadvantage that she's not going to be able to get this fight to the ground. She definitely, if she's working on her grappling, she's going to have to show a level of it that we haven't seen in the past, in my opinion, to get this fight to the mat. And for what it's worth, at least Oliveira is also competing in grappling tournaments, in the past few years. Like you said, I think that she's going to have the striking edge, and if her length does enable her to stay on the feet, I think this could be a really long night for the undersized Ricci.
I'm going to go with Ricci. I think Oliveira's too long, too lanky for this weight class. I think she gives up way too much strength in those takedown situations. Tabatha's going to find her way on top. I think she pulls it off by armbar, but like I said, I'd play a plus 300 here way before I take Tabatha at minus 225. If Tapology is correct, Mason Jones is going to be taking on David Onama in this spot. But for us, we're going to skip up to the prelim main event, also the casual cap challenge of the night here. We're We're in the middleweight division where we see an Iron Turtle, Jun Park, taking on Gregory Rodrigues, who's 10-3. Jun Park has been having a ton of success here lately, man. He's found himself on a 3-fight win streak. And the most impressive thing that I've seen, this guy has shown unreal fight IQ. You know, whether it's the fights with Marc-Andre Barriault or, John Phillips, he knows where he's good, and that's in the ground game, and he takes it there. And then you look at the Tafon fight, he knows he has a speed advantage, and he's jabbing his way on the outside, doesn't put himself in danger, and eventually starts mixing in the takedowns. That is what you like to see, especially when you're going to back him. But for me, I'm going to be on the other side here and take Gregory Robocop, man. He's training at a full-time at Sanford MMA now. This guy is absolutely massive for the division. And one thing I was telling you, he doesn't give up zero strength at 6'3". You see Kevin Holland, who's 6'3", and just gives up so much strength. And this guy is just built like an absolute brick shit house. And I think that's going to be useful, man, in defending some of these takedowns. He really impressed a lot of people last time out against Dusko Todorovic. Looked really good in combination. His right hand was stupid accurate. The takedown attempts that Todorovic got deep on, was able to whizzer out of them. Got himself off the fence, and man, all that combined with the jiu-jitsu background that includes the jiu-jitsu world championship, I think Gregory's going to be able to keep Jun Park off of him. I think it's going to be a standing fight, and I favor the striking of Gregory. I noticed Jun Park constantly circles right into the power hand of Gregory. I think he's going to be able to catch him with it, man. It is a pick'em. Best line we can get for the casual cap on Saturday, and I'm going to go with Robocop Rodrigues, man.
Wow, so yeah, it's a great fight for the division, but I'll be back in Iron Turtle this week, man. I'm glad that you brought up his fight IQ. I think he has the skill set and the fight IQ to absolutely roll through Gregory Rodrigues this weekend. You talked about how he showed some holes early on, especially in that Fluffy Hernandez fight, where he gives up 6 takedowns before ultimately getting submitted by him. But hey, that aged pretty well, dude. Fucking Anthony Hernandez, the black belt killer. That's not a bad loss anymore. To me, I think that Jun Park actually has the boxing advantage in here. He definitely came into the UFC with a background in boxing, and he was good on the feet. Then he got up against Fluffy Hernandez, gives up those takedowns, and he adapts his game, man. You see in the next 3 fights, he lands 11 takedowns on a 3-fight stretch. And looks awesome, dude.
Tailor-made opponents.
Sure, tailor-made opponents, but...
And what he did to John Phillips, he should be in jail for not finishing him.
Fair enough. But you land 400 strikes on anybody, that's about as dominant as performance you could get.
For sure.
Looking on the Gregory Rodrigues side, I can't see why anybody's super confident in backing him, just because... What has he shown? You talk about the Dusko Todorovic fight, and really, realistically... It's a padded record, man. Dusko hasn't performed to his to the ceiling that we thought he had coming into the UFC. I mean, it was in 2019 where Gregory Rodrigues, the striker, is getting knocked out by a welterweight. It's not something that I'd want to back against somebody like Jun Park, who does have the crisp boxing, who has implemented a takedowns into his game, and also thrown in kicking into his game. That was something else that he wasn't really big on up until these last few fights. I don't know, man. I think that Rodrigues does have the better power. I will admit that. I just don't think he has the crisper boxing, and I think that the speed advantage of Park will ultimately check the chin of Rodrigues, and he'll probably end up getting the finish. If he doesn't get the finish, I could see it kind of being a greasy decision, which is common for the casual cat, but I can only see that because I could see the judges putting a lot of weight in the shots that look extremely hard from Rodrigues.
So I personally, everything I stated, I think he'll be able to keep this on the feet. And, when it is boxing, I think it's going to be a whole lot close. I agree that Park is going to have a big speed advantage, but Tafon is slow. Tafon is very slow, and the speed advantage looked even extra there. He's 5'10" versus a 6'3" as well. So, man, I think Gregory's going to be a whole lot stronger in a lot of positions Park has found himself in recently. But I sided with Nchukwi last time, but I told you that Jun Park by decision plus 300 was the prop to hit that night. Because if the guy can get his wrestling going, he's got good top game. He's heavy on top. And Tafon, we had not seen him wrestle before, And what do you know? He goes out there, hits a decision plus 300. Park is a decision machine, man. And you can get it at plus 215, plus 240 in some places. I think if you're on the side of Park, I don't hate if you stab at that decision, man. I think he could potentially jab his way, mix in the takedowns, and steal a decision. But I'm going to side with Gregory.
Kicking off the main card, we go to the light heavyweight division, and we're in for a shit show to open up this main card. It's against Negumereanu versus Ike Villanueva. And, luckily, both these guys were able to save up enough PTO time at work to take off for a weekend and accept a fight. This is bottom of the barrel light heavyweight division for me. And, if I'm being honest, Ike is a decent boxer with a chance to catch anyone. And that's even more true in these higher weight classes. But realistically, I don't think that he's UFC talent. And being the tough guy can only get you so far, especially when you don't have the chin to back that anymore. Nick, on the other hand, promising record. But you do a deep dive into that, and it's fluffed in its own right. Before entering the UFC, he only had one win over somebody with more than 5 fights and a winning record. So nothing about these really make me want to back either of these opponents. And to be honest with you, Negumereanu dropping one to Saperbeg and then edging one out against Alexa Kamer can't give anybody a lot of confidence betting either one of these guys. I'm going to pick Nick here, but I wouldn't ever touch that with my hard-earned money.
I'm on Nick, but I think a little bit more comfortably than you are here. The side, the showing against Saperbeg, I get it, man. Saperbeg is bottom level, but it is literally upon like a day notice, and you can definitely tell that Nick's cardio, he's just not prepared physically to be able to go the full 15 minutes for someone to grapple his balls off. He took over 2 years between that and this fight coming back with Alexa Kamer. Got hit a little bit more than you definitely want to see, but man, he showed he can take a fucking punch. And Kamer has twice the athleticism, twice the footwork, twice the speed that he's going to see here with Ike. Nick, much kind of like Julian Erosa in that Sean Woodson fight. Nick is able to just exhaust guys by just putting this type of forward pressure on him. He's constantly making them circle off the cage, and big boys just don't have the gas tank to be able to do that for the full 15 minutes. He's able to take one, to give one. And, man, I think when he closes distance, he's going to be so much stronger than Ike. I feel like he's going to be able to put Ike up against the cage. I don't want to say ragdoll, but I do think Nick has a clear grappling advantage here if he's actually going to use it. With Ike, he's 37 years old. He's at a 4-ounce fight club. And when you look at it, Daniel Pineda is literally the only person, that I can even see that he's training with. He talks about having that full-time job, being the blue-collar fighter, and that's just something you don't want to back with your hard-earned money because he's not spending his full time in the gym, the boxing, the calf kick, and somewhat durability is about all he's got now. And when I look at Ike's last couple performances, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. This guy is beat pillar to post by Chase Sherman, and I know Chase ends up popping after that fight.
And is a true heavyweight. For sure. But yeah, again, a very low-level fighter that just puts an absolute ass whooping on Ike. And then you go down to the fight where Jordan Wright is a middleweight, making his debut up at light heavyweight, making his UFC debut. And he comes out and drops you right off the bat with the spinning wheel kick, then puts you in the clinch and cuts you up. Ike did not have a single pretty much successful second in that fight. And that's a guy that I was on my fade list, And then Prochniel, Prochniel literally beat the shit out of him until he finished him with the body kick. And his only win being Vinicius Moreira, who went 0-4 in the UFC, getting knocked out 4 times. Ike is like you said, man, not UFC caliber to me. Maybe minus 200 for Nick is a bit of a stretch, but I do think he rolls on Saturday. It's a stretch, man. I got to go back to that Saperbeg-Safarov fight, man. Saperbeg-Safarov is now a middleweight, and he was able to put Negumereanu up on the cage. And I know that Saperbeg has the grappling credentials, but Saperbeg's coming in as an underdog to Gian Villante and getting finished by Gian Villante. I mean, you want to talk about bottom of the barrel. You cannot drop a Saperbeg-Safarov fight and expect to have any success in the UFC. I think this is another case that Ike is probably going to have the quicker hands, and it could be a shit show. Everybody has a puncher's chance, especially in those higher weight classes. So if you needed any more reason not to back either of these fighters, that's it.
I feel you. Moving through the card, we're in the welterweight division where we see Dwight Grant, who's 11-3, taking on Francisco Trinaldo, who's 26-8. Dwight Grant is coming off a pretty lackluster performance his last time out. He's one of the biggest favorites on the card, and drops the fight to Stefan Sekulic. Well, sorry, he actually wins that fight, but should have absolutely walked away with an L. And Stefan Sekulic actually gets cut after that fight, which is extremely, crazy to me. I thought Grant followed a completely just dumb game plan. He did not test the gas tank one bit of the guy that was coming off of a 3-year layoff, content to try to point fight, and that's not that's not his style. And anytime Sekulic landed, it looked like it took a effect on Grant. I don't think this guy really wears a punch too well. I don't like his gas tank that much, and he's already 37 years old, so he's no spring chicken by no means. I backed a 43-year-old last week with the casual cap, and I'm going to back another 43-year-old again here with Francisco Trinaldo. I feel like the weight cut for the old man finally to 155, it finally started to take a toll on his body. He missed for one of the first times in his career, but it was enough to tell him, hey, I got to move up to 170. And first time out, man, getting Muslim Salikov, that's a tricky puzzle to solve for a whole lot of people on the feet. Trinaldo has always been a very durable guy, so it brings me a little bit of concern to see him dropped in his last two. But he really was, he was in some danger in the Jai Herbert fight, but, looks like he's able to get his wits back, comes back and knocks Jai Herbert out. I don't think Grant is going to show Trinaldo a single thing he hasn't seen over his freaking 30-something fight career. I like Francisco Trinaldo here, although, the size, athleticism of Dwight, it's a bit concerning. But yeah, man, give me the 43-year-old, and I think we've already put a unit on him.
Yeah, so I'm also taking the 43-year-old here. Honestly, I think Trinaldo has the ability to mix this up if it does go to the ground. I think that I'll trust his Brazilian black belt more than I will Dwight Grant's ground game right now. The Herbert fight's a really good fight to try and draw comparisons on. I understand that it was at 155, but Trinaldo thought it was at 170. So Herbert mimics Dwight Grant's fight style relatively well. And you touched on Grant really not having a chin at this point in his career. That's something to worry about, knowing that Trinaldo will continue to push forward and has decent success staying on the outside. I know he'll be undersized here, but Dwight Grant doesn't do well under pressure, and I think we saw that in the Daniel Rodrigues fight. Yeah. And Francisco Trinaldo has beaten better strikers, Bobby Green, John McDessie. Yep. I think that there's plenty of upside in taking Francisco Trinaldo here. I know both of us were a little bit, kind of backtracking on our decision to take Trinaldo, but shoot, the more that we break it down, the more I think that minus 120 is a fair price tag for Trinaldo. And I'm glad that we played it.
Yeah, man. I think the leg kicks of Trinaldo, they're going to eat at that wide stance that Dwight likes to come out with, chop down those legs, land that straight left, that nice body kick that he has. And you touched on a big point, man. I think the grappling of Trinaldo can really be a difference maker in this fight if he does, attempt to take this fight down. Only concern is at 43, he's not oftentimes a big grappler, so I don't know if I trust the cardio to do that for the full 15 minutes. But I don't want to say it's more of a fade on Dwight Grant, but it kind of is, man, because Dwight Grant, to me, is very, very bottom level. Each time this guy steps out in the octagon, I really do see less and less that I like from him. His best shot, to me, is when they exit the clinch. It's kind of like I told you with Montel Jackson. His reach is deceptively long for the weight class, and he can kind of catch guys where they think they're safe. But other than that, man, if it's not a lucky punch, I like Francisco Trinaldo, probably by decision.
Yeah, and Dwight Grant's win over Alan Joban, probably his best win, but that was a shit-ass fight, It was a really bad fight, and if that's your best showcase in the UFC, it's going to be tough for me to want to back you. So
I'm with you.
We move on to a great matchup in the featherweight division where we see Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres taking on Sting Seung Choi. Honestly, I think that this is a case of great matchmaking, but really bad odds making. I see this fight much closer to a 50-50 than I do this 70-30 price tag that we're seeing right now. Both these guys in their career have shown holes in their ground game, which is, the primary reason why they have lost fights in the UFC. But neither one of these guys are going to have to worry about that this fight. Choi has great size for the division and great stand-up, but really hasn't put together a win streak that's worthy of this type of praise, He KO'd Arosa for the 6th time in Arosa's career. He got a decision over Yusuf Zalal, who's currently on an L3 in the division, and then a win over Suman Mokhtarian, who went 0-3 in the organization. None of that reads being a favorite over somebody like Caceres, who is making his 24th walk to the octagon this Saturday. One, it's impressive to make it to the UFC. Caceres has been fighting in this organization for a decade and has over 20 fights, and I'd be very curious to see where Sting is in 20 fights from now. This type of fight is one where I think that a lot of people like to just dismiss these vets like Alex Caceres, who's been able to make a career in the UFC. To me, it reminds me a lot of the Bahamendez-Makdessi fight, where everyone wrote off Makdessi because he was facing this bigger, newer striker in the division. But in my head, if Caceres can go to split decisions with guys like Yair Rodrigues, who's taking on Max Holloway in a couple weeks, one of the best strikers in the division, the 20-1 Guan Wang, I think that he's going to be able to hang with this new striker in the division. In my eyes, I think Choi is a minus 150. I do kind of think that he would win this fight. But at the price tag at plus 240, you can bet your ass that I'm going to be laying it on Alex Caceres.
So I see it a little bit, maybe way different than you do, man. Alex Caceres, you're right, man. The dude's an absolute veteran at this point. And he's never really put together any type of win streak. You look at it a couple years ago, and he puts together a decent one, and it's topped off with Sergio Pettis, who's a bantamweight and flyweight for the longest time. Sergio Pettis is Caceres' best win to date. Mm-hmm. Then you scroll down, and you look at the stats of the Yair Rodrigues fight. He is doubled up in strikes thrown and doubled up in strikes landed, and somehow is getting a split decision. You look at the Guan Wang, the guy is 19-1, fighting nothing but Chinese cans, and has not fought a single time since the Yair fight. So there's no way to judge how that split decision is even aging. When you look, he's probably looking in his best form right now on his 4-fight win streak. Steven Peterson, Chase Hooper, Austin Springer, and Kevin Kroom are as bottom level as it gets in that featherweight division. And I would be willing to bet everything that 1 year from now, neither of those 4 guys are in the UFC anymore. And that's going to go with the correlation of you look at every single one of Alex Caceres' wins, not a single one of these guys are in the UFC anymore. He's not fighting top-level guys when he is having success. On the side of Choi, he's a Korean Muay Thai champion, and he comes into the UFC and gets done absolutely zero favors right off the bat. Mm-hmm. You know, he's getting Movsar Evloev and Gavin Tucker, both guys top 15 featherweights, an astounding wrestler, and a legit BJJ black belt on the mat in Tucker, and, you know, just horrible stylistic matchups. But I think, you know, in the Zalal fight, he showed enough wrestling to me that I think he's patching some of those holes. He showed me enough there. Zalal is a better wrestler than Caceres to me, and he showed up enough that I think it does stay on the feet. And while, you know, I guess he could cover a plus 230 price tag, dipping on the outside, picking some shots with the, you know, with his kicks. But when you line 2 guys up on the feet, man, I got to go with the Korean Muay Thai champion. I got to go with the guy that I've seen more technical things out of, the guy that I think is improving at this point in his career. So I'm going to go with Choi. I will tell you, though, I'm not one of those people that have parlayed him in all my parlays this week, because I do think if it does stay out at range, Bruce Leroy for a reason, you know, he could cover the plus 240 price tag and make it look a whole lot closer and probably drag this one to decision. I don't think he's going to get TKO'd or anything the way Julian Erosa or anybody did. But I'm going to go with Stingwoo Choi in a striking battle. I just got to lean with the guy who I think is a better, cleaner striker.
I got to go for Choi striking again. I got to try and dip into it. You know, he's getting knocked out by guys in 2017 in top FC that are 5-2. He's been outstruck in his career, and you know we
mention he redeems it by a knockout.
Sure, he redeems it, but he's been outstruck in his career, and that's against guys in top FC. Alex Caceres really hasn't been outstruck unless it's one of the top guys in the division. And yeah, we don't have anything for Yang's last, he hasn't come back to the octagon after that loss. But you don't go 20-1 by mistake. That's got to count for something. And maybe some of his wins, the guys aren't in the UFC, but it's UFC talent. He's seen 24 of them up until this point. I just think for the price tag, it's absolutely ridiculous to try and think that Choi is worth, you know, anywhere close to that. Like I said, I cap him at minus 150, but only because he's a little bit bigger. I think that this will probably be a greasy decision, and I kind of hope all the Choi backers kind of get fucked on this one.
Moving on, we're in the women's bantamweight division where we see Jessica Rose Clark, who's 10-6, taking on Joselyne Edwards, who's 10-3. Just gonna say, if you don't follow Jessie Jess on Instagram, magnificent follow and something you should get on real fast. She's making her yearly octagon appearance basically here. She's not been someone that's been real consistent. She's been battling weight cut issues, injuries outside the octagon, and that's where I can kind of lean where Joselyne Edwards having a big advantage, and it's in her activity and probably the ability to make improvements in her game recently. But Rose Clark is, I guess you're gonna have, I guess I could say the experience is. She's been in big fights with Paige Van Zandt, with Jessica Ai. She's fought Penny Kyanzad twice. And online, man, she looks in phenomenal shape. I think she's the more polished fighter of the two, and I think she's going to have a big advantage physically, as I think Joselyne Edwards, tends to struggle with these stronger girls. A little bit of MMA math to kind of tell you why Jessica Rose is the slight favorite here. You see Jessica Rose, her last time out, she stopped Sarah Alpar, pretty devastating fashion, to be honest with you. And just a couple fights back, we saw Sarah Alpar, wrestle Joselyne Edwards to a split decision win. I went into this one with Loopy and Carolina on my mind, really wanting to give Joselyne Edwards the chance here, being a couple inches bigger, a couple inches longer. But the way Jessica Rose Clark fights so physically, the dirty boxing, the cage control, I think she's going to have success here. It's going to be a greasy, probably split decision incoming, like a lot of women's bantamweight fights are. They hit the judges historically more than any other weight class. I don't want to be on either one of the sides here personally with my money, but I'm going to go with Jessica Rose Clark.
So hear me out. I think that this would be a pick'em fight if Jessica Rose Clark was ugly. And I really mean that. I think that there's a lot of people backing her just because of the way that she looks and because she has a lot of fans right now.
Only fans right now.
Only fans. I don't have an excellent read on this fight, and I can admit that. And it's mostly because we don't see enough of Jessica Rose Clark to get a good read. How is she going to look a year from now? And that's what you're guessing each time that she comes into the octagon. Right now, I think skill for skill, she probably has the advantage everywhere against Joselyne Edwards. But, you touched on it. Just like the Lupi Godinez Carolina fight last week, this is a size over skill in this type of matchup. And it's the ultimate equalizer, and that especially holds true in women's MMA. If you're giving up size, you're giving up your chances of winning. In my opinion, it's just not a good look. I think Jessica Rose Clark is the much truer ex-125er. I know that Joselyne Edwards had one fight in her career at 125, but she's a big ass girl. She's 5'8", and we've seen in the past Jessica Rose Clark, whenever she has size disadvantages like the Penny Kyanzad fights, both of them, she just can't implement her game plan like she's used to. In the Sarah Alpar fight, she actually has a height advantage over Alpar, thus she can implement that game. And I just don't think she's going to be able to get the Amazon woman Joselyne Edwards to the ground. I think that it'll be a stand-up fight, and I guess that makes this somewhat of a coin flip. So I like the dog here at plus 125. Wouldn't be backing it with my own money, but just looking at a girls fight, given the stuff that we have, I think that it's okay to take a dog here.
Yeah, I don't hate it whatsoever. This is an extremely close fight. Like I said, you're going to be sweating whatever side you're on, I think, when the decision's being read. And did enough of that last week, man, so probably stay away here.
In our co-main event of the evening, we're at the lightweight division where we see Grant Dawson taking on Rick Glenn. Glenn, he's coming off a 2-year layoff and didn't look like he had any ring rust in that comeback. He beat Silva to the punch. His timing looked great. And he didn't look undersized at all in that new weight class, which was nice to see. I was kind of happy to see that he took those 2 years off. Looks like he filled out in his body and everything. And I think it's safe to say now that Glenn, being 32 years old, I think he's in his prime right now. And, I say that with some hesitancy. 2 years off and that Joaquim Silva showing doesn't really tell me much. We didn't really get to see if he patched up any of the holes that he had whenever he left in 2018, and that's in the grappling realm. Dawson, on the other hand, looks like a fucking menace in this division. And if I'm being honest, he looks to have a much higher ceiling at 27 years old than Glenn ever did in his career. For sure. Dawson still isn't a finished product, in my opinion. The last time he faced a UFC vet in Santos, who's 41 years old. Santos was making his third appearance in the octagon in over 5 years, and he was running on borrowed time. It was a nail biter in that fight, and I know the judges didn't see it that way, but I personally thought Santos was about to squeak out a decision if he didn't get knocked out. To have him winning in this spot at an 80% clip, I think is a little bit overvalued, considering the unknowns in Rick's game. At this point in his career, it's his prime. He got his hip fixed. he might have patched those holes in his game. And Dawson's biggest win and most impressive win, probably coming to Trezano, doesn't make me want to back him at this type of, minus 400 price tag. To be fair, it's not like Dawson can pick his opponents or anything, but the wins that Rick Glenn did have over wrestlers like Gavin Tucker, Dennis Bermudez, those wins hold a little bit more weight in my book than kind of the untested Grant Dawson right now. For me, I think that you got to be wary of Glenn being kind of the new and improved fighter. That being said, Dawson should take this, and I think the only reasonable price tag to take Dawson is his decision line at plus 150. Rick Glenn's one of those guys, very, very tough to finish, and I think that he'll probably be able to take a beating long enough to get to the judges.
I feel you, man. With Grant Dawson, he's a Glory MMA guy. Probably why he's getting a whole lot of love, He's
it adds an extra 100 points if you come from Glory MMA.
He seems to be like I told you, James Krause's pupil. James Krause seems to be all in on and Grant Dawson and one of his best prospects at his gym. You see him training there all the time, cornering all the fighters from everywhere. And he's a very, very incredible good wrestler, man. And he has a really good pace that he can put on with that wrestling pace, ability to chain wrestle those attempts together. And while Krause is working on his striking to improve it, what I like most about Glory MMA is they have a game plan. They always come in there with a tailor-made game plan to what they know their fighter is best at. And Dawson's not one that seems to deviate from it a whole lot. I draw comparisons from that Erosa and that Trezano fight. Those are tall, lengthy, 5'11", lightweights that Grant Dawson was able to get down to the mat. And then I watched Rick Glenn give up six takedowns to 145 Dennis Bermudez. And then I watch him in his debut at 155 pounds, which is the fight that made him go down to 145. Evan Dunham basically, man, just out-wrestles this guy, gets him in a bunch of front headlocks and chokes. And Grant Dawson's line could be a bit overvalued, but I think there's potential on Saturday that it comes out and is 100% correct. With Rick Glenn, he talked about him coming back after almost a 3-year layoff, dealing with the hip surgeries. He left Team Alpha Male in the process and is training in some gym in Iowa, which, nothing I don't really like to see. Even if you're just going back to Team Alpha Male for 8 weeks before your camp, that's a good gym that's going to prepare you, especially for the wrestling that I think you would see coming from Grant Dawson. And the Joaquin Silva fight, you're right, man. 0 ring rust, and I couldn't have been more happy for Rick Glenn, to be honest with you. But as a bettor, I really, really wanted to see more, from him. I wanted to see him defend some takedowns. I wanted to see his cardio. A whole lot more that I wanted to see from him because I considered Rick Glenn a wild card even before that. You see him come out and just put on just an absolute clinic on Gavin Tucker, just whoops him from pillar to post. And then, 2 fights later, he's showing up missing weight, getting just boxed up by Kevin Aguilar, getting hurt badly. Rick Glenn, like I said, he's just always got some question marks. I think this move up to lightweight will help him. I'm hoping the improvements have been made, in the off time. But I think Dawson is going to be able to get the takedowns here, man. I really like to favor the grappler. I don't know if it's going to be by decision. I think there's also a chance he could sub Rick Glenn. You probably don't get much, relief, but DraftKings, FanDuel, they have some double chances where you can do submission and decision. I don't know how much of a break that you get, and there's always a chance he ground and pounds out from top. So if you're going to play Grant Dawson, really the only way you can do it on Saturday is to parlay it to have any type of value. But I don't think we're going to be doing that, man.
No, and I got to bring up something else about Dawson that I did not like in his last fight. In that Santos fight, if you rewatch that first round, his entries on his takedown attempts were fucking amateur. I mean, realistically, he was leaving himself wide open. And as far as I'm concerned, Rick Glenn in his last fight, his timing was on point. And I could really see if Grant Dawson doesn't set up those takedown attempts, Rick Glenn catching him. So that's why I'm hesitant to lay that huge price tag. Yeah. And honestly, I think that Dawson's most likely path to victory, getting that at plus money.
Wet blanket.
Yeah, it's probably going to happen that way. So I like Dawson by decision at plus 150.
Can't hate that. In the main event of the evening, we're in the middleweight division for a showdown between Paulo Costa, who's 13-1, taking on Marvin Vettori, who's 17-4-1. Not myself, but I know a whole lot of people going into that Izzy fight really, really thought Paulo Costa was going to come out as the next middleweight champion, man. And When you really look at those fights and those wins leading up to Israel, it's like, I don't really want to discredit the man, but he really might not have should have won that Yoel fight watching it back. And funny enough, Yoel's the one that got a title shot off of a loss in that fight, And then when I look through the other four, he beats literally Gareth McLellan and Bang Bose, who are 1-4 UFC fighters. And who do they give him next? Just bloated, USADA fractured welterweight Johnny Hendricks, who took the biggest dip of almost any champion we've seen to date. And man, Uriah Hall will straight up put his back on the fence for you.
Probably the exact opposite of what Costa is,
exactly.
A volume puncher.
I just feel like it was tailor made for him to, to rise to the top. And then all the, excuses that he comes up with for the Izzy fight. Now he's talking about, not even being able to make weight. He's pulled out of 2 fights with Cannonier and Whitaker, trying to get back at the top. I'm not sold on Paulo Costa, to be honest with you. With Marvin Vettori, man, the guy trains out of King's MMA. I think he improves each time that he's out there. He is coming off his second loss to Israel, which makes it a little tricky, because he's going to have to go on a streak, man, to get another shot at Israel. His best hopes is probably for somebody else to eventually take the belt. But to give it to him, man, that last fight with Izzy, he had a lot of success, more than a whole lot of people have had recently. He landed a takedown in every single round of that fight, was able to get in, close the distance on Izzy, and something Costa was never able to do. He fights with just a chip on his shoulder, man, and it works for him. He's got a bunch of built-up aggression, his volume, his pace. It's very high level, man, and he can keep it up for the longest time. I want Paulo Costa to have to make that weight cut down to 185 or at least a little bit, because I think Marvin Vettori's pace and pressure will wear on him as the fight goes down. I'm going to go Marvin Vettori here. I'm going to go the round 4 stoppage for Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, so I like the Marvin Vettori pick. We have played it for the podcast already. And, like you said, the what?
Beat the line, too.
We did beat the line. We got him at like a minus 108. And you now see him at like the minus 125.
40, I think.
Minus 140. Yeah. Shit. But yeah, to be honest with you, I really started to worry about Costa after he lost to Izzy and started blaming it on that wine stuff. Just anytime that you start to hear excuses.
Right.
Marvin Vettori at least is just like, dumb enough to think he won the fight. He's not really making excuses, It's been over a year since we've seen Paulo Costa in the octagon, and it doesn't look like Kelvin Gastelum's going to be able to save him now, even with the weight miss. I know Marvin Vettori, he's down to fight Paulo Costa and has, I think, been outspoken in saying that he'll accept a fight at 205 if he has to. And I think that just kind of speaks to the confidence that Vettori has in this matchup with Costa. Costa is definitely a volume-heavy striker and nearly doubling the strikes attempted per minute of Vettori. But that's kind of where his game ends, You talked about Marvin Vettori's ability to switch it up, and up until this point in Costa's career, he's shown zero ability to mix it up in his offense and really hasn't fully incorporated MMA into his skill set. Vettori, like you said, tough matchup for anybody. In the Izzy fight, he resorts to his grappling. In the Sanchez fight, Sanchez is a far better wrestler, but you see Vettori able to be strong enough to keep it on the feet the entire time and ward off the takedown attempts of Sanchez. I think both these guys are pretty damn big for their weight class. As we know, Costa has trouble making weight. But I don't think that there's going to be a clear size advantage or strength advantage for either of these guys. And actually, if they do lock up, I kind of expect Vettori to win those battles because I think he's the more technical out of the two. And when it comes to clinch situations, I think that he's far more successful in attempting a takedown or trying to control him up against the cage. Something that I noted about Costa's last fight against Izzy, it was his first 5-round fight. And according to him, he was, waiting to turn up the pressure in those later rounds. But to me, he just looked like a deer in the headlight, kind of mesmerized by the movement and length of Izzy. And if he allows Vettori to steal a couple of these rounds right off the bat, I think he's going to be in for a long-ass night. Vettori's not the fighter to care about getting a finish, and he's more than happy in making this fight boring. And if, he'll use that little fight IQ that he has, I think that he'll be able to grind this one out. So my pick is Vettori by decision. Not sure where that's sitting, but I do think that we're going to see Vettori roll here, and I'm glad we're both on that side.
Yeah, I don't hate decision at all. I actually put a play on FanDuel where they offer alternate rounds, and you can get Vettori at 4 or 5 or decision, and I was able to hit that. I think that pace Could potentially, break Costa early or late, as he's never seen championship rounds. Never been pushed with someone with the forward aggression that can match it of his. Yeah, man. I honestly, we're kind of reserved on Marvin Vettori saving a half unit in case the line went the other way and we could get him a plus money. And now it's going at minus 140. There's some other people, reinforcing what I think I'm seeing here too, man. I like Vettori.
Checking the Vettori by decision, plus 200 is about the best price you can get. I don't think that that's good enough when you're getting almost evens on Vettori. Yeah. I would just take Vettori's money line because, like you said, there's an upside for the finish, just knowing that Costa's never been 5 rounds, and he's either going to have to show something he didn't in that Izzy fight to prove that he could go those 5 rounds.
I'm with you. Minus 140 sitting out there right now. We got it at minus 108. Hope you guys were able to get something similar,
Minus 145 is the best line you can get on Vettori now.
60, my goodness, yeah. We did our job. We just need Vettori to do his now. Anything else you want to add on that particular fight?
No, that's it. That's it.
I think that's it for me too, man. Casual cap this week. We're going to put it on the prelim main event. Another pick'ems fight, which we love when we're on the opposite sides of those. We got Jin Yun Park and Gregory Rodrigues. Should be a real fun fight, man. But through the 14 fights, I know we only broke down 12, but there is 14. If there's one that stands out to you there, what is it?
It's the Caceres versus Choi fight, man.
Nice.
I think a lot of people are overlooking Caceres here, and I think that it'll be a fucking scrap.
Yeah, I personally don't hate it. I'm not laying minus 300 on Choi. I could very well see Caceres covering that plus 250 tag. For me, second fight of the night, man. And it's flyweights. The one I'm telling you is not going to decision. I'm going to take Molina and Lacerda. Lacerda been to a second round once. Molina had finished all of his opponents up until the last 2, and the last 2 were just absolute barn burners, man. I think there's an absolute finishing upside for both of those guys there, and you can get plus money. For my fighter to watch, I'm going to go with Jessie Jess. She's a little easy on the eyes. She's fun to watch. Hopefully she gets in some good Mackenzie Dern positions down there on the mat. But she's a once a year fighter and stuff, So I'm ready to see what she is here on social media. She looks and thinks she's in a great shape and a great mindset. And I like the physicality style to maybe be able to push Joselyne up against the fence.
Yeah, I like that as well. My fighter to watch is going to have to be Ricky Glenn, man.
Nice.
I think that he's got a real shot to make this a whole lot closer than the odds makers have lined this. And because we didn't really get to see much off of that 2-year layoff in his last fight against Silva, it's going to give him an opportunity to kind of showcase those new and improved skills that he talks about.
I'm with you. And what about an underdog for you on the card?
So my underdog, I mentioned it earlier, I think Caceres has a really good chance. And plus 240, I think that's a stab all day for me.
I feel you. For me, was the casual cap a couple weeks ago for Jamie Pickett. I'm going to take Jamie Pickett here. I was able to get like plus 230 last time, and I think it's only plus 200 or something now. It's not going to be a big play for me, but I'm telling you, the man's size and athleticism will win him fights eventually, and I think there's no better opportunity than to get a smaller welterweight that just having trouble making the weights for that to come true for him.
Yeah, so I actually don't mind that at all. My prop, I guess, is going to be Dawson by decision or Park by decision. The Dawson by decision sitting at plus 150, the Park by decision sitting at plus 250. I think there's value on both of those lines, and that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, man. If you weren't going to say it, even though I'm on the other side of him yet again, those Park decision lines are just juicy, man. He's a decision machine when he gets on top of the guys. He doesn't have a whole bunch of ground and pound, a whole bunch of offensive jiu-jitsu, but he's very smart at keeping that position, and that's what makes those lines so juicy for him. For me, my prop, and it is plus money, is the Molina Lacerda doesn't go the distance. It's ranging from even money to plus 120. I know it's flyweights, so I probably wouldn't lay any juice on it. But, man, if you can get plus money for guys who historically don't even see a round 2, I do like that. And best bet on the whole card for you, what is it?
Best bet on the whole card, Marvin Vettori. And the more that we talk about it, the more I do wish that we would have laid 3 units instead of 1.5. But, it is what it is. I don't think at minus 150, minus 160, I'm jumping at the gun to bet him. But at even Stevens, for sure.
I like it too, man. And I'm really hoping that this fight stays together. I'm hoping Marvin is a man of his word. Just takes the fight at whatever weight this is. Makes a scrap out of it. For me, I'm going to go with Dawson in a parlay. I think his line may be, if it's minus 330 or whatever it is right now, what is it? Minus 350, 400, minus 340. That might be a little too much, but I do think he is about a minus 300 here in this fight. I've seen stuff in the past that shows me Rick Glenn can give up takedowns from even lighter guys. And I don't really like a whole layoff where I didn't get to see much from him the first time either. So I'm going to go with Dawson in a parlay here. Maybe don't lay as much as you would as the 300 favorites.
Right.
I know one bet that we're really liking is the Khama Worthy and the Jai Herbert minus 225 line. I'm not going the distance.
We're going to try and find a parlay for that.
We're definitely going to find a place to try to play that. It beats the other lines by quite a bit and could potentially be a steal, man. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have any disagreements, hop in those comments and let us know. And hop in the comments real quick. Let us know how you guys have in the main event. Appreciate you watching.
Peace.